name is Minya Laher. I came to the UK in 1967. We were economic migrants. And when we came here, we had no choice but to go out and work. I started work in a laundrette, and I was paid £5 a week for a 6-day week. And over time, I realized that the future was not in work, the future was in entrepreneurship. So I studied hard, went to university on a part-time basis, qualified, taught finance in a college for 17 years, and decided that I need to change my life, change my mindset, and started investing. My first investment was in a 2-bedroom apartment in London, which I bought for £8,000 in 1977, which is now probably worth in the region of 350,000. And I realized when I was teaching that there are two types of people: the ones who do and the ones who think. And I branched out in business. My business now could be called wealth management or asset management. In the good old days, they used to call us wheeler dealers. Essentially, what I try to do is identify opportunities here and globally. Now, the thinking behind forming the Friday Club is essentially to bring people together and create a situation where they are aware of investment opportunities, and also they are able to network. The other objective of forming a Friday Club is that people will be coming to the evening and they will be striking deals. Now, as a result of striking deals, they will be benefiting economically, and the intention is that for every deal that is agreed on, a contribution of 10% of the value of the transaction will be given to a charity. We do see the Friday Club as being a global Friday Club. Membership is quite open. All we try to do is recover the cost of the venue and the cost of the food that is provided. At the last meeting that we had, there were two areas that we discussed. One was on the opportunities available in 3D printing. Now, 3D printing is the next industrial revolution. Essentially, what we are saying here is that we will be able to manufacture any item from a small machine or a big machine, depending on what you need to produce. The idea behind 3D printing is a very simple concept. If one looks at nature, nature is very instructive. If you look at a tree, the tree grows layer by layer. And over a period of time, what it does is it grows. And the same concept can be applied to the manufacture of items. Mankind traditionally have taken the subtractive approach to manufacturing. That is, they take a piece of wood, a piece of metal, glass, rubber, and they cut it, and you end up with a final object. With 3D printing, the approach is very different. What we do here is we say that any item, be it glass, food, rubber, plaster, can be turned into powder or into liquid. And we can build something on the base of layers. So essentially, you have a powder or liquid that throws it onto a surface. The surface moves up and down and across. And over a period of time, you build on layers and you get a final object. I am very excited with 3D printers, particularly for third world countries, that is in Africa, South America, Asia. I see us going back to the cottage industry. Essentially, we'll have localized manufacturing, and Africa is an interesting case because a lot of raw materials go from Africa to China. So we send timber from Africa to China, and then the final product comes back to Africa. Now, it would make more sense if the product was made in Africa. There will be savings in transport, there will be savings in storage. The other advantage of 3D printing is we're talking about customized items. Okay. The cost of production is very, very low. So for example, if you were to look at a small 3D printer, which will cost in the region of £800, that can make any plastic object measuring 6 by 6 by 6. So if you need to make phone covers, the cost of producing a customized phone cover would be in the region of 10 to 15p. And anyone making them would be able to sell them at quite a good profit. It's relatively easy to make things on the 3D printer because one could scan the object and the object will then be printed. 3D printer can be used to produce food. For example, we could talk in terms of making chocolate. Okay, so children could be making images of themselves as chocolates and eating it. We could make children could make their own toys. And I think by next year, we will have a situation where kids will no longer ask for toys, they will ask for 3D printers. My passion is 3D printing. This is something that I spent sleepless nights thinking about. We would show you an example of the cube printer. By no means is this the best available, but from an aesthetic viewpoint, it's the best looking 3D printer. And I will show you how it works so you have an idea of the mechanics of it. We have the 3D cube printer here. They retails for around £1,200. It is user-friendly, looks quite neat. There are other printers available from £200 onwards, but they're not that user-friendly. This particular machine can make plastic objects 6 by 6 by 6. The principle is pretty straightforward. You have a plastic filament here. You have a gun here. Okay? The gun heats the plastic and it turns it into liquid. The liquid goes, you have a platform here that goes up and down and across. The gun will throw the plastic. Initially, you put some glue down and it'll hold the plastic, the liquidized plastic. Okay. And the platform will go up. So for example, we have a key ring here, which is quite robust. Can you see? You can have it in different colors. And you can print a name. So to produce something like this, it takes about 20 minutes. You could have about 4 items on that platform. But as time goes on, the productivity will increase on this. But to produce a key ring like that, it costs 2p. So you could have a personalized one with your name or your address. Alternatively, you could have cubes. Now, if you look at this little box, how it's been built, layer by layer. Okay. Now, this idea about building something on a layer by layer. It's known as additive manufacturing as opposed to subtractive manufacturing. Traditionally, we would have taken a piece of plastic and cut it to size. Now, what we are saying is instead of cutting it to size, we will build it layer by layer. There's hardly any wastage, and economically, it's very cheap. And you only produce this as and when required, so there's no storage costs. Now, it is very hot. There are other 3D printers that come in a box, okay, and give out fumes. This one doesn't. The other interesting aspect of this is that you get software which you can download on there, and this plugs in. Okay, so essentially you plug in your from there. And hey presto, it'll make the object that you want. Okay, so this one could make plastic objects. A good area would be phone covers. To buy the filament, it costs you £40. You can get different colored filaments. You can get a printer which will use about 6 or 7 different colors at one time. What else can I tell you? The machines, depending on what you want to produce, if it's a building that you want to make, you will have a massive 3D printer, and it'll be basically the same idea. All it'll do is it'll have concrete, and you'll throw concrete onto layers and build it by layer. So you'll have a rail that goes down, throwing the concrete and moving all around. If it is an aeroplane that you want to make, again, you have a large 3D printer which will throw stuff onto a platform, a very large platform, and it'll make the final product. Now, at present, if your washing machine breaks down, you have no alternative but to throw away the washing machine because they do not make the spare parts to fix the washing machine. With a 3D printer, all you do is you bring the spare part out, you scan it, and you'll produce the identical object for you, which you can then put in your washing machine. Similarly with light bulbs. You can, instead of throwing away light bulb because one of the fittings is broken, you could make that particular spare part. Same with cars. Okay, so the inbuilt obsolescence that we now have in manufacturing will be no longer a restrictive item. So I see a situation where from an environmental viewpoint, 3D printer will help us considerably. No longer do we need to get rid of items. There will be many items could be reusable.
Also, Brother Salim, I want to tell us about his charity work and how this platform can help.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I'm really, really happy and excited to be here today because we've been talking about this idea for the last 5-6 months to make it happen. Alhamdulillah, today I think it's 1,000-mile journey starting with this simple step, inshallah. Because we all came here for a good cause, inshallah, and there's a big barakah and blessing behind this, inshallah. So I'm assuming and I'm hoping that, inshallah, this will grow day by day, inshallah.
I've been really invited here to sort of talk about the club and the vision that we have. I think Naz has stolen a lot of my what I'm going to say anyway. So if I'm boring you, then please I'll ask for forgiveness now. But anyway, thank you for coming this cold autumn. Thank you for making it here. It's not very easy, especially when the evening draws so near so quickly. Many of you in this room are professionals, business persons, academics, artist students of one kind or another, or probably on a journey getting there. I grew up in the city more or less, and it was quite common on Fridays for my colleagues, my boss, to say, you know, let's go down the pub, let's have a drink. And I used to go get my Worcester sauce or my orange juice. And But it's a common affair. You know, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and you get your promotion. You don't go. You either sit in the office, work the extra hours, or you go home. I didn't have anyone to go home to at the time because I wasn't married. Now I want to go home because probably not so much. But anyway, so many of us, this is probably a common experience. We sort of slip away, you know, the embarrassment of saying, you know, the inevitable no, you know. So I've stopped making excuses. So I just sort of slip away at 5 o'clock before they ask them. I'm now self-employed. I don't have that problem as much because I'm more in control. Having said that, there is undoubtedly a pressing need for social networking and exchanging of ideas and resources. I'm not talking about sort of social media like Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp, because I think we're sort of growing into sort of introverts. You know, everybody's on their Apple, their iPhone, iPad. My kids are, you know, you could be texting someone right next to you. Why don't you talk to him?
The average cost of electricity that a computer, a desktop or a 17-inch laptop computer uses is between 150 and 180 pounds a year in electricity. The Zanshuri computer, based on an Intel i7 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM and 250 gig SSD, will operate in exactly the same way, will be entirely as reliable, and will use less than 30 pounds of electricity in the same year. Now, if you extrapolate that idea from one computer in a house to 100 computers on each floor in a 6-story building, you can imagine the cost saving involved. I wasn't thinking about cost savings when I established the organization. My interest was, how can we develop systems that will use as little electricity as possible and then be applicable in environments where you do not have reliable grid electricity, where you're dependent on batteries, or you're dependent on solar energy, or anything else in that vein. Then Shuri computers are capable of doing that. In the process of designing these systems, I was also able to establish an understanding with the UK government that I can develop a system that will work, will be reliable, will basically run on a car battery, and will be able to be used in all walks of life. Today, every police car and every ambulance in use in London uses a processor based on Zanshuri technology. Every single one. With a 3D printer, I can have an idea. I can make that idea into a reality which I'm holding in my hand 20 minutes later. It will cost me the cost of the plastic. It's an amazing game changer, and it really can change the world, and it will change the world.
How many of you have been to China? Well, quite a few. Yeah. Now, I know that when Minya came to China a few months back, that he changed his opinion of China. I don't know what your opinion was, but certainly he said, look, this is the place I want to be. Not just because of the pretty girls in his own world, they wear shorts in China. Now, because it's hot, we went to Xiamen, that's a very hot place, they do wear shorts. But there are a lot of business opportunities. And indeed, that's what I wish to quickly go through, how to attract Chinese investors successfully and cost effectively. Because the country is attracting Chinese, Docklands is attracting a lot of Chinese, I'm sure in various fields. I know from the early meeting that quite a few of you in the property business and so on. And when you see how much or how many Chinese are buying here, you will realize how could I get them over here? That's my topic today. I run it quite quickly so that in case you don't always understand my Chinglish, that's what they say, Chinese English. And this is the purpose. I asked my assistant to type it up. I said, look, people can read at least if you don't understand me. So start with some fact figures. Now, China has already become the second largest economy in the world. And some say we will overtake the US. Particularly those who don't like the US, so we say yes, we will actually overtake them. Now, we already have the highest amount of foreign reserves. That's the fact. Because the amount of foreign reserves, I have the precise figure now, is 3.6 trillion US dollars. Now that figure alone gives the good reason for China to encourage outward investment, because by holding those reserves, these are central reserves, and private individuals has 10 trillion US dollars, because we have this saving culture, which is not always good for economy. By holding those money back, we are losing, literally losing, because the US dollar is devaluing pound sterling. In my own experience, the pound used to buy 15 yuan. I know 1 pound is only about 9, so it lost 1/3 in value. And that also explains why you see so many Chinese coming to buy here, because the currency is stronger. So we do reach, in terms of investment sector, from large state-owned companies to private equity firms. There are more private equity firms in China than in USA. Very few people know that fact. So because there's so much money available, they raise money and then they want to invest in various things. So this is also why if you have a project here, either in property, in manufacturing and so on, put it forward to us and we will seek out for the finance providers because they know they have idling cash there and they can invest in something as far as they see there's exit and profit and so on. And that's why we recommend the investment destinations. Infrastructure developments are favored by the Chinese because we've had that experience. Those of you who have been to China would agree with me that we have the bullet trains, the highways, they're super modern. I mean, when we brought the H2 project to China, talking to China State Construction, which built the high-speed links between China, Beijing, Shanghai, which shortened traveling time from 26 hours during my time to 4 hours and 50 minutes. So you know that it's built just within a few years when UK is planning for 30 years later. So it's a kind of a big